Welcome to the Bare Metal Cybersysm Prepcast. This series helps you prepare for the exam with focused explanations and practical context. Security policies are the foundation of a strong governance framework. These documents do more than set expectations. They formally establish the organization's intent, authority, and direction regarding information security. A well-written policy creates clarity. It defines the boundaries within which procedures must operate and ensures that control enforcement has both legitimacy and structure. Security policies communicate to every part of the organization that information protection is not optional. It is a formally endorsed priority tied to business goals, legal obligations, and ethical responsibilities. The function of a policy is not simply administrative. Policies give meaning to technical and procedural controls by providing the context for their design and application. They clarify what is expected, who is responsible, and how enforcement will be handled. Policies are also indispensable in audit and compliance scenarios. They demonstrate due diligence and serve as authoritative references when questions arise during investigations or assessments. Most importantly, they occupy the highest level in the documentation hierarchy, sitting above standards, guidelines, and procedures. They inform all the documentation that follows and should be created with precision and care. To be effective, a security policy must exhibit specific characteristics. First and foremost, it must be aligned with the organization's business objectives, regulatory requirements, and risk appetite. A policy that ignores business reality will either go unenforced or face resistance. It must also be written in clear and concise language. Accessibility is essential. If users cannot understand the policy, they cannot follow it. Policies should avoid technical jargon unless absolutely necessary and must speak to a broad audience that includes executives, legal teams, IT, HR, and end users. Enforceability is another requirement. Every policy must include clearly defined rules that are supported by measurable controls. These controls ensure that compliance can be verified and violations can be addressed. Approval of the policy must come from recognized governance authorities, such as a security steering committee or executive leadership. Once approved, the policy must be distributed to all relevant stakeholders and made available for review, training, and ongoing reference. It must also be acknowledged, particularly for policies with legal or compliance implications. Security policies can take multiple forms, and understanding these types helps structure a comprehensive policy suite. The enterprise-wide security policy serves as the top-level document. It defines the organization's security philosophy, key objectives, and general responsibilities. Beneath this are domain-specific policies. These focus on areas like access control, data classification, acceptable use, or system administration. They provide more detailed guidance while remaining broad enough to apply across departments. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other podcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Issue-specific policies target narrower concerns. For example, a policy on remote work, mobile device usage, or social media conduct may address particular risks or regulatory needs. System-specific policies drill down even further, providing technical guidance on how to secure individual platforms, databases, or applications. This policy hierarchy must reflect scope and authority. Higher-level policies establish principles, while lower-level ones define enforcement methods and operational expectations. All policies must clearly state their applicability to avoid confusion and inconsistent implementation. Every policy should follow a structured development lifecycle. The process begins with initiation, where a need is identified. This may stem from a risk assessment, audit finding, incident, or new regulation. The next phase is drafting. Here, content is developed in collaboration with stakeholders and subject matter experts. This includes legal, compliance, IT, and operational teams. Drafting should ensure that the policy aligns with existing documents and current business goals. Once drafted, the policy enters the review stage. During review, policy language is refined, conflicting statements are resolved, and gaps are identified. Reviewers assess whether the document supports the organization's legal and regulatory responsibilities. After revisions are complete, the policy moves to the approval phase. Approval must come from formal governance bodies such as the board, an executive sponsor, or a designated security committee. Once approved, the publication phase begins. The policy must be communicated, stored, and distributed appropriately. Access should be governed by role and function, ensuring that every employee sees the policies they are expected to follow. Engaging stakeholders throughout the policy creation process is critical to long-term success. Legal teams help ensure the policy aligns with contracts, privacy laws, and regulatory obligations. HR contributes input on enforceability and integration into employee practices. IT and security teams bring technical feasibility into focus. Business unit leaders ensure that the policy supports, rather than obstructs, core business operations. When stakeholders are involved from the beginning, their concerns are heard and incorporated, reducing friction during implementation. Involving stakeholders also clarifies accountability. Every policy should have a named owner who is responsible for keeping it current and relevant. This person does not act in isolation. They coordinate enforcement, training, and revision efforts. Engaging early and often creates a shared understanding of the policy's purpose and impact. It turns what could be seen as a compliance requirement into a collaborative business enabler. Policy content must be structured logically. Each policy should begin with a statement of purpose. This explains why the policy exists and what it aims to achieve. Next comes the scope. This section defines who and what the policy applies to: users, systems, processes, departments, or vendors. The core of the policy consists of policy statements. These are the actual rules and requirements. They describe what behavior is expected, what is prohibited, and what conditions apply to access, use, or administration of assets. Roles and responsibilities should also be defined. This clarifies who must do what and supports accountability. Exception processes, enforcement mechanisms, and review timelines should be explicitly stated. This ensures that the policy is enforceable, revisable, and legally defensible. Policies without clear ownership, scope, or review frequency are likely to become stale or ignored. Version control and formal approval procedures must be applied to every policy. Approval must be granted by authorized governance entities, not just individuals acting alone. Once approved, the policy receives a version number and an effective date. This ensures traceability and allows users to distinguish between current and outdated guidance. A change history must be maintained. This log should include what was changed, when, and why. Obsolete policies should not be deleted outright. They must be archived in accordance with records retention schedules. Keeping historical versions ensures traceability and supports investigations or audits. The most current enforced policy version must be clearly indicated wherever the policy is published. This avoids confusion and helps ensure consistent application across the organization. Policy communication and acknowledgement are just as important as content and approval. Policies must be distributed using official channels such as email, employee portals, or intranet sites. Acknowledgement is often required, especially for policies tied to regulatory compliance. Users may be asked to review and electronically sign a policy annually. This reinforces awareness and supports enforcement. Policies must also be included in onboarding programs, security awareness training, and refresher courses. They should be easily accessible for consultation. Whether it's a user wanting to understand the password policy or an auditor verifying access controls, accessibility is key. Policy documents should include contact information for clarification. Questions should be encouraged and addressed promptly to ensure continued understanding and support. Policy compliance must be monitored actively. Each policy statement should link to a control or monitoring mechanism. For example, an acceptable use policy may be enforced through endpoint monitoring or data loss prevention tools. Audits, self-assessments, and compliance reviews provide additional visibility. Violations should be tracked and documented. Exception requests should follow a documented workflow and be subject to periodic review. Reports on compliance status, violations, and enforcement actions must be submitted to governance bodies. These reports should include trends such as repeated violations or systemic weaknesses. Persistent issues should be escalated to leadership for resolution. Monitoring is not about punishment. It's about ensuring that policies are understood, followed, and adapted as needed. All policies must be reviewed on a defined schedule. Annual or biennial reviews are common, depending on the policy's scope and criticality. Reviews must also be triggered by regulatory changes, internal incidents, or updated risk assessments. For example, a shift to remote work may prompt review of access control or data classification policies. Policy reviews should reassess alignment with current business operations, technologies, and threat landscapes. Stakeholders should be consulted during updates to ensure that revisions are feasible, relevant, and clear. Updated policies must undergo the full life cycle again, including review, approval, communication, and acknowledgement. Policies that are never updated risk becoming irrelevant or worse, misleading. Security policies are more than words on a page. They define your organization's approach to governance, risk, and accountability. They guide behavior, clarify responsibilities, and support resilience. For CISM professionals, developing, managing, and evolving policies is a core responsibility. It requires cross-functional collaboration, strategic awareness, and the ability to translate complex risks into clear expectations. Done well, security policies empower people, strengthen operations, and enable trust. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Bare Metal Cyber CISM Prepcast. For more episodes, tools, and study support, visit us at baremetalcyber.com.